All right, let's talk about these Mh370 videos because I'm seeing a lot of garbage online. And look, I wasn't meant to be working tonight. I don't have the white shirt on. We were not meant to be on the clock, but I'm seeing a lot of people just kind of talking garbage and the uninformed are eating it up. Now, we're going to be looking at a debunking video of these Mh370 videos. I'm going to be talking about why it just doesn't make sense. But I think it's important to understand that, yes, I'm approaching this from an artist perspective because I think that's important, because once you don't need to be a good artist to understand that the way these people are trying to debunk these videos makes zero sense. All you need to understand is workflow and the way people do things. And I can explain that to you, and that's what we're going to do. And you'll understand just why the reasons in these videos, they just make no sense. And to someone who actually is informed, it kind of reeks of someone like desperately trying to, either someone who's uninformed or someone who's just desperately trying to make an excuse for something. This is uploaded by someone called Baker Tuts, and it's gotten quite a lot of traction, nearly, not far off 500,000 views. But they've said, here's how difficult it is to match the shockwave from the Mh370 video. Feel free to recreate it yourself in After Effects if you'd like. So let's just take note of this, right? There's this whole animation here. You get to see it. Look, so there's this frame, this frame, this frame, and I think somewhere around here is where they pause it, right? Okay, first of all, my biggest question is, let's just assume that this debunks it. What about the rest of the animation? Okay, because there's like about 5 frames before this, 5 frames after this. What have they done to create those frames? Because those frames aren't an identical match at all. Otherwise, they would just overlay the whole stock animation and play it over the whole Mh370 video, but they don't, which is weird, right? Because if this is a match, the whole thing should match all the way through, but it doesn't. So they single out this frame. Now, before we zoom in and continue playing the video, just take note of like this little point here, this little point here, this little point here, because they don't actually exist on this frame even. And that's why you see them zoom in here. Take a look. So there you go. They've pulled that out of the frame now because those little parts don't match. This section that they've zoomed in on is the part that I would say matches to like a high 90%, like a 97%. And I'm okay in saying that because the fact that this almost matches after doing some compositing, like that's not that crazy to me, in my personal opinion. I'd like that doesn't prove anything. That's not groundbreaking. That's not a wild coincidence. If it didn't require any compositing, that would be impressive, but it does. So I think people need to understand what that means and how obscure it is for anyone to have done this. Let's continue watching though. So they've had to twirl this one frame. They had to do some color matching. They've had to add a blur. They've added noise. They've twisted it back and again. First of all, we can't see this part in the original. So why is that? If this all matches, why aren't they doing like a transparency layer? Second of all, this here, I mean, look at the gap here compared to here. It's different. Okay. Look at this up here, the way this curls down. This is much shorter than this, like, and look, there's more of a curl here. There's not that there. These are similar. I'm not arguing that. And I want to say that like anyone who isn't like a trained visual effects artist or hasn't done anything like this before, you're not stupid or silly for seeing this and finding it convincing. Like I totally get that. And I'm not trying to knock anyone who has seen this kind of stuff and has thought, oh, it must be fake, because I get it. I want to try and run you through what it's like as an artist who was allegedly just making a make-believe video of a plane being zapped in their bedroom for a bit of fun, right? First of all, when you go online to get an asset and you go to download a free asset of an explosion that you need to include in your project, you're going to find an asset that suits and you're going to grab it. You're going to put it in your project. You might do a little bit of color grading. You might do a little bit of compositing in terms of making it blend into your scene a little bit better. But there is absolutely no reason to go in and composite only one frame of the effect. Remember, there's a whole, let's go back. Look at how many frames are in this thing. This is the whole shockwave effect. That whole effect goes far longer than the Mh370's app. So not only that, they've gotten their effect, they've gotten the little part that they want, they've then composited a single frame for no reason. For no reason. Because remember, the compositor who allegedly did this, they're not trying to copy anything. They don't have a video of a plane being zapped they're trying to mimic. If you did, if an artist was given a reference and been told, we want you to make a video or a picture that looks like this, then you could understand having to maybe go in on the finer details and do weird compositing to try and get it to match up. That would make sense. But that's not what this is. That's what this person is doing to this. He's manipulating this to make it match up a reference photo. But you would never, ever do those kind of completely random and obscure changes to a stock effect for a fun project that essentially had no meaning. Now, the same person's also done a similar video here on the satellite video. So let's check this one out. Again, they've found one frame. Okay, so this person's alleging they've used the same animation. And they've blurred it and stretched it out. And now it matches on that one frame. What you're seeing there is not evidence that this is that. What you're seeing there is a creative and skilled compositor finding an asset that is similar and using compositing skills to match a reference. If you are just making a project with no reference, because remember, before all this, planes didn't get teleported out the sky. Okay, there was no video of this to reference it off. Therefore, that obscure, minute, meticulous compositing that needs to be done to match it on only one frame wouldn't ever be required. There would be nothing that would prompt you to do that. If it was warping across the whole animation, if we applied those effects, the little warps and bends and twists, and then overlaid the whole animation over the whole animation, I could maybe buy into that a little bit more, and I could maybe begin to understand that. But the fact that it's a single frame, where are the other frames? How did they make the other frames? What did they do with the other frames? You don't just go in and randomly composite on one frame. You just don't do that. Now, guys, I'll say I'm not completely shut off to these videos being hoaxed, by the way, okay? But I'm just looking at it from a visual effects perspective, which is what I know. And I think anyone who's kind of worth their weight in visual effects would agree with me and would understand that just because you can composite something to look like something doesn't mean it's fake. I'm not afraid to admit that I believe that these are real videos. And I think what we see in these videos is extremely hard to digest. It's extremely hard to wrap your head around. I get that, especially if you're not involved in like the, UFO space. But if you are involved, and strangely enough, there are people who are involved in the UFO space and still just vehemently deny these videos. First of all, I understand what we're seeing is tough to digest, especially if you are to completely follow the line of thinking and research of Ashton Forbes, and that this is an American military operation, which just adds a whole other layer of conspiracy and craziness to it. I'm not against that idea, by the way. I maybe feel like it could be something different, but I'm not sure at the end of the day. But what I am sure of is that when I see these videos and understand the methodology that would have had to have gone into, like the thought process that would have had to have gone into making these, it makes less sense, okay? That makes less sense than if you were to maybe follow the line of thinking that the United States probably has a lot of secret technology, probably reverse engineered UFOs, likely has mastered gravity, potentially since the 50s and 60s. We're in 2025 now, 1993. Ben Rich from the Skunk Works was saying we can do anything you see in Star Wars or Star Trek. Is it actually that hard to believe that maybe this is a real video? I actually don't find it that hard to believe. I find the American military, you know, secret operation part harder to believe, but I'm open to that too. I'm a little bit more along the lines of thinking that this is potentially some kind of non-human intelligence that has done this, some kind of phenomena that we don't quite understand. At least we don't. I'm sure, you know, levels of the military probably do. That's probably why they had a drone there at the time to film it. But look, I just wanted to say that because I see these debunking videos online a lot, and I find it frustrating how regular people who just aren't educated would see that, and I can understand why it could be convincing. So I just wanted to try and make this video to give you a different perspective and explain why that it just, yes, you can do that, but it makes no sense. It makes zero sense. It makes way less sense than there being a non-human intelligence or some kind of phenomenon or some kind of secret technology that we don't know about being used without our knowledge. Honestly, that makes way more sense to me. Guys, thank you for watching. This was something I just had to get off my chest, you know. It's been on my mind for a little bit. We had a little chat with Ashton Forbes recently. I'm curious to know what you guys think though. Like, did that change your mind? Did that give you a new perspective on how you look at these videos? Or did you hear what I have to say and just still just not convinced? Let me know what you think in the comments. Guys, I appreciate you watching. We've been pumping out the videos lately. It's been good. Please come and join the conversation in our Discord. The link is below. I also now, you can support me directly with the channel membership, of course. You get members only videos, but I also now have Buy Me a Coffee, which was a suggestion from you guys. So it's just another way you can support the channel. More of the contributions do come to me, and it's pretty simple and direct. The link for that is below as well. But as always, guys, I just appreciate you being here. I appreciate you watching, commenting, and watching the videos all the way to the end. You know, when I know you've made it here, I know you're a real one. So I appreciate you. And we'll see you, I think, probably pretty soon. We'll probably have a video out tomorrow. Alrighty, guys, take care, be good, get outside, touch grass, and I'll see you all next time.
Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on?
No matter how far you go into the dark, when you flip, you go exactly the same place to the light. In our galaxy, everything. Because everything is in balance. Everything is a polarity.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk